New gacha game called Revived Witch came out last week. It's got old school pixel art with HD effects that really remind me of Octopath Traveler. It's got pretty good music, and of course, 99% of the characters are all female. Because of course they are. Well, except for this one dude, right here, Abel, and he's the lowest rarity in the game. Feels Abel, man. Anyway, I've been playing this game for the past week, so I wanted to make a quick team build guide for the starter UR character that I chose, Akasha. Near the start of the game, unless you have the worst luck of all time, you basically get to select for free one of 4 characters who are the highest tier of rarity. A Fallen, Tunel, Caledonia, and Akasha. I chose Akasha because I thought she looked the coolest, and I also like characters that use swords. There's one big problem though. Out of the 4 available options, Akasha is basically considered the worst of the 4 UR characters, and the one I saw recommended the least to start with on global server at launch. That said, for me at least, Akasha seems perfectly usable. I do think that playing her might not be as straightforward as the other characters, since as far as I can tell, the meta right now seems to heavily revolve around stalling with crazy health regeneration, tanking, and then doing massive AoE damage. This can be seen through the most common characters that the general player base recommends you to start with, a Fallen and Ushpia. A Fallen is a character that can grant her entire team 2 full seconds of invincibility, and she's super tanky. Ushpia is a character that stuns all opponents on the enemy team and deals huge AoE magic damage. Another meta unit is Ela, who, while people don't generally recommend because she's hard to get unless you buy the battle pass, she's also really broken. Ela is like a really tanky character that passively regenerates her own health, deals massive AoE physical damage, and also shreds physical defense all on her own. On the other hand, Akasha is a single target physical DPS, looking at her normal and chaos skills here, both single target. So her kit isn't as loaded as some of the other characters, but I still think she's pretty good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with playing the meta, by the way. I'd probably play the meta too, if I had those 3 characters, but not everyone has those characters. I think a lot of us don't. So if you also chose Akasha like I did, despite her being the least recommended character because you thought she was the coolest of the starter characters, but you're having trouble making Akasha work in PvP, this is a guide on how I recommend doing that without having to spend money. However, if you aren't one of the 7 other people besides me who chose Akasha, this video still might be interesting or offer some useful advice regardless. So with that, let's begin. There will be 5 sections to this guide. So first, I'll lay out what the free-to-play team composition is for Akasha. Second, I'll explain why this Akasha team comp is strong and why it'll work. Third, I'll explain how to play the team exactly, like the skill ordering and stuff that you should use in a fight. Fourth, I'll outline build priority to get the team as strong as quickly as possible. And then finally, I'll do a PvP battle demonstration to show the team actually fighting in PvP, practical application. So on the left-hand corner here, the left half of the screen, you can see the free-to-play Akasha team setup that I have. There's Akasha, of course, the free UR rarity character you chose, if you're an idiot who completely ignored everyone's recommendations. One of us. And then there's Sinetia, this character here in the middle. She's a free SSR rarity healer that you get in the mail, so like everyone should have it. And then finally we have Cetus, who is an SR rarity tank and one of the most common units in the game. So if you started with Akasha, it's highly likely that you can run this team comp. Because I mean they're all like easily obtainable characters. as long as you have Akasha. So I personally run Cetus on the front line, as you can see here, because she's the tank. Sinetia, the healer, is in the middle, and Akasha, the DPS, is in the back line. Akasha has a lot of like invulnerability frames during her chaos skill here. Arcane Luster Slash. So I think putting her in the back line is pretty useful for protecting Sinetia, who you really don't want to die because she's your healer, of course, and like sustain is really important in this game. Here's an explanation for why this team is effective. First, let's take a look at the character we're building around, Akasha. So what are Akasha's strengths that we should build around? Well, looking at her kit, I'd say 3 of her biggest strengths are the huge amounts of single target physical damage that she can output, the large number of hits she lands, and the fact that her normal skill only has a cost of 1 bar. So we want our other 2 team members to be able to take advantage of those 3 strengths. Sinetia works well with Akasha mainly because of her charge skill here. Him to bandage, which triggers automatically when you use 4 normal or chaos skills. This skill gives your entire team a constant AoE heal and a decent attack buff for 10 seconds straight. This means that Sinetia pairs amazingly with Akasha, since as we went over earlier, one of Akasha's biggest strengths is that her normal skill is only 1 bar, which is the lowest possible usage cost. And in practice, what this means is that you'll be able to trigger Sinetia's Him to Bandage skill extremely quickly, and then once you trigger Him to Bandage a single time, oftentimes you'll have 100% uptime on the charge skill for the entirety of the fight from then on. And because Him to Bandage is also a charge skill instead of a chaos skill, she also won't interfere with Akasha's usage of spamming her own chaos skill, which is this team's main source of DPS. You really don't want your whole team fighting over chaos skill resources, so having a passive AoE team heal is super nice. Sinetia also, of course, fulfills the typical healer role in a well-rounded comp of a DPS, a healer, and a tank. And then finally we have Cetus. And she's an SR tank that completes our well-rounded team composition. So how does Cetus synergize with Akasha exactly? Well, the main reason why Cetus is good with Akasha is because of her chaos skill here, Shield Bash. Shield Bash stuns the opponent for half a second, which can be useful in PvE against bosses, but more importantly, if you read that, for the next 10 seconds, it shreds the opponent's physical defense by 5% of Cetus's physical defense each time they take damage, up to 100% of her defense. So this is a huge DPS increase for Akasha. Not only does Shield Bash shred physical defense, which is perfect for Akasha, our physical DPS character, but it's even more perfect because it also shreds physical defense for every single hit, up to a maximum of 20 times. And like, what was one of the previous strengths that we mentioned before for Akasha earlier? It was that Akasha lands like a super huge number of hits. Akasha's normal skill hits twice, and her chaos skill hits a whopping 6 times, meaning that Akasha is the perfect character to take advantage of Cetus's 10-second defense shred when Cetus uses her chaos skill Shield Bash. Do note that I think Caledonia and Avel, 2 other tank characters, also have defense shred chaos skills, so those characters are potential alternatives to Cetus if you want to use them instead. But I don't have Caledonia, and I could be wrong, but I think Cetus is stronger than Avel, so I went with Cetus here. Here's an explanation of how to play this team. So first of all, if you haven't done this already, you want to turn on free mode for auto battle, so you have more control over auto battling. The AI has robotic precision with triggering skill timings, which is a nice DPS increase, and turning on free mode allows you to actively control which skills are triggered during auto battling. Here's how to do that if you haven't done that already. Just go to system settings here, and it's the third setting here, auto combat. You want to change that from default mode to free mode, and you're good. Alright, so let's go over how to play the team. It's actually fairly simplistic. So the first thing you want to do is use Akasha's normal skill 3 times. Then you want to use Cetus's chaos skill once for the 10-second defense shred. That will trigger Synetia's charge skills simultaneously because 4 actions in total have been taken. And then for the next 10 seconds, you use Akasha's chaos skill, which hits 6 times and does massive physical damage, and then continue using Akasha's normal skill. If your normal skill bar builds up too much, you can use Cetus's normal skill or Synetia's for the heal. So you can use Akasha's chaos skill faster, which happens occasionally, but not too often, where your normal bar builds up that much. Once 10 seconds pass and Cetus's physical defense shred wears off, you just rinse and repeat that pattern over and over. That's literally it. So overall, the team is pretty simple and straightforward to play once you get used to it. Here's how you want to prioritize building your team for PvP to make it stronger efficiently. The most important thing is to get your Akasha, Synetia, and Cetus to A3 as quickly as possible. Ideally, you want all your characters to be A4, of course, but that costs a lot of resources. I try to prioritize ascending Akasha the most to A4 because you need to break through your opponent's defenses to win in PvP. Because you're not gonna out-tank your opponents with this team. Right now I have Akasha and Synetia at A4 and Cetus at A3, as you can see, and I'm planning on getting Cetus to A4 later. It's just not as much of a priority. The second super important thing you want to do is get purple gear for all 3 of your characters and max ascend that equipment because you want the stat boosts from gear ascension, because those are pretty big stat boosts. So as you can see here, like this gear is all maxed, and you can see like the diamonds, like the red diamonds, that shows that this gear has been ascended. For Akasha, you want to prioritize crit substats because she's your DPS. For Synetia, you want to prioritize attack substats because her heal scales off her attack stat. And then for Cetus, you want to prioritize physical defense based equipment because her physical defense shred scales off her own physical defense. The third thing you want to do is upgrade Akasha's chaos skill, because this is where most of your team's damage ultimately comes from, like the base part of it. Akasha's passive skill is also pretty nice when it triggers, so you want to try to get that as well. Although it's only 10% chance, it's still huge when you get it, like a massive DPS increase. After that, you want to get Synetia's passive skill since it's also pretty strong. Let me show that real quick. And then finally, if you can get stronger physical defense gear for your Cetus, I think that should help increase your team's DPS quite a bit because it'll increase your defense shred. But yeah, I mean at the end, ultimately, obviously you want A4 max level, but that just costs so many resources. That's hard to get right now at the start of the game. Let's see how this team actually performs. Hopefully well, because it'd be silly if I just got owned after explaining all this, which could happen. But yeah, especially since at first, I think at the beginning of the video, I said this would be a quick guide, but the video ended up being long as hell. You should cut me some slack though if I have to fight a whale team. If I fight like some monster with all A4 characters, max level, maxed out rainbow gear, not gonna lie, I'm probably screwed because my team isn't that strong right now. Even if I am just fighting the crappy AI and not like a real human being, just because of the differences in team strength. This team comp is decent, but not invincible. I just think it's like good enough to beat the AI, which is really all you need in the PvP. I'm gonna do the maximum of 8 uncut PvP fights in a row, and let's see what happens.
雑念を捨て全身全霊を全て投げ投じるのです。倒れるわけには。全て投げ払う。いざ参る。すべて投げ払う。倒れるわけには。先生の力。すべて投げ払う。倒れるわけには。死にたくなければ私の前から消えなさい。すべて投げ払う。倒れるわけには。すべて投げ払う。倒れるわけには。哀れなやつめ。剣の道は深い。さらに精進せねば。雑念を捨て全身全霊を全て投げ払うじるのです。倒れるわけには。全て投げ払う。 雑念を捨て全身全霊を全てなぎ払うじるので倒れるわけには。全てなぎ払う。死にたくなければ私の前から消えなさい。雑念を捨て全身全霊を全てなぎ払うじるので倒れるわけには。抱きしめてあげる。全てなぎ払う。倒れるわけには。全てなぎ払う。倒れるわけには。全てなぎ払う。 全てなぎ払う。倒れるわけには。全てなぎ払う。人生の力に。せねば。
抱きしめてあげる。
すべてなぎ払う。倒れるわけには。すべてなぎ払う。覚悟。倒れるわけには。
Let's review the PvP matches. Overall, I think it went pretty well. We fought the hardest difficulty 8 times, and we won 7 of those 8 times. In the 4th fight, the game crashed, which happens on my phone occasionally, because my phone isn't super new. The one time we lost was in the 6th match against a Whale Ella, with near maxed out level, maxed out skills, and some rainbow gear on. I feel like that can't really be helped. Maybe once I get my own team to max level, maxed out skills, and rainbow gear, I could expect to fight that Ella on equal footing, but until then, I feel like losing that is realistic. The team isn't a miracle worker. I think it's just decent, but I mean, it works most of the time, as you can see there. Honestly, I would have refreshed my PvP opponents there normally, once I saw that it was a whale. But, like, I knew I was fighting a Whale Ella there after looking at their stats. However, I just really wanted to test the team for the demonstration. So I got my ass kicked for you guys because I wanted to set realistic expectations for the team's strengths. But yeah, I think it was a good demonstration of this Akasha free-to-play team. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'd really appreciate it. I didn't initially intend to, but I ended up spending quite a bit of time making this video, so I hope all the details I provided were useful. Anyway, take care and have a good one.